and when it became about other people. And I love the idea that if you want to pass on wealth, there's a way to teach more than just how to invest in real estate or how to invest in these things. I think those things are really important. But I want to invest in my son so that now he knows what it's like to go help someone else. So since my son was 3, my investment in my son was every time we did a service project for a neighbor, my son would come. That's just how it was. That's just what we did. So every time we went to do a project, it was just be there because I wanted to invest in him that was the norm. What we did was we just helped other people. And the cool part is uh, now that he's 14, we had a service project last week. I'm like, hey, we got a gentleman in our neighborhood that's 94 and he had a flood in his basement. And there's a problem with it because it's got all this mold on all these books. We have to take the carpet out and all this. So a bunch of the neighbors got together. We got a dump trailer, and I said, "John, you want to come up?" "Oh yeah, sure, let's go." And he must, I mean, we thousands of pounds of books that had mold all over them and carpet and all this, and he didn't hesitate. He just said, "Yeah, that's what we'll do." And so I want to leave. I want to pass on to my kids that it's not about them. And I don't know of a way to do it other than what my grandfather did, and that is be engaged. And a great way to say that is we bought a little yard tractor. It's a Massey Ferguson subcompact little 4-wheel drive tractor. So we looked online. I found one in Virginia, which is super close to Salt Lake. It's like a 60-hour round trip drive, like why not? Let's do it. So we went to pick it up, and as we were coming back last May, I it was tornado season as we were driving home. So we leave Nauvoo early in the morning. We got a tractor behind our truck. We're going along and we're trying to avoid tornadoes. And the road was going to take us into Iowa, up through Des Moines, and then down into Nebraska and then Omaha and Lincoln and home. And I'm like, that's not going to work out. So I tried all I could to avoid that. And then the map on the truck took us into it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Right. So we get to almost Des Moines, and I'm like, this is bad. I mean, like this wall up there is just terrible. So we found a way around that, and we get into Omaha, and it is raining like buckets. It's absolutely insane. It's dark. It's 2 in the afternoon, and it is dark as night, and it's raining buckets, and we're doing 40 on the freeway, leading everybody, and our wipers can't keep up. And I said, Jonah, teaching moment. What am I going to pass on? I'm going to pass this on to Jonah. I go, Jonah, what should we do? Should we be a buffalo or a cow? And he was like, what's the difference? I said, in a storm, a buffalo walks into the storm. And in a storm, a cow walks away from the storm. Do you want to get through it faster or should we hang out and wait for it? And he's like, let's just drive on, Dad. I'm like, let's do it. Let's just keep going. And so we said, all right. And we just kept going. And about 20 minutes later, we got through that rainstorm. And then we got over to Lincoln, and almost the same thing happened again because they had more storms there. And then, we just kept going. And it's interesting that I have a neighbor who runs a trucking company who says it's windshield time that you spend with people doing what that is. It's amazing the conversations that happen. It's amazing the things that go on and what you talk about. But it is windshield time because my son's been saving his money, right? And so he bought a pontoon boat that he wants to rent out. So the day after Christmas, we went to, of all places, just down the street from where we picked up the tractor, Chatham, Virginia, to pick up a pontoon boat and drive home in the winter. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. It was that close. So we're driving through and we run into these monsoon rains. There was a nasty storm that did a whole bunch of damage in Houston and then moved up. And we drove through it in Kentucky. And so as we're driving through Kentucky to get to Indiana, where we're going to spend the night, He's like, come on, Dad, we're going to be the buffalo. We're just going to do this. We're just going to get through. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm tired. Our automatic cruise control shut off so many times from the water coming so fast that the sensor where the windshield wipers goes kept turning off saying clean the sensor. And I'm like, I don't know how to make the wipers go faster. They don't. But it just rained so hard. We're just like, okay, we'll keep going. But he called me up on Thanksgiving Day, and I think this was the payoff in the passing of the wealth. And he said, or just before Thanksgiving, we're doing a thing in seminary, and I wanted to call you, Dad. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And he said, I just wanted to tell you thank you. And I said, okay, for what? And he's like, when things go bad, I've never seen you lose your mind. I've never seen you lose your cool. You're always like, okay, what do we got to do? And you've always looked for a way to get through it. And you've always looked for something you can do to say, how am I going to make this happen? What's our alternative? What's our solution? What's our plan? How are we going to do this? And I mean, I was like, wow, thank you. I was so appreciative. I was like, thank you so much. And I thought, how cool is it that that's his mindset? That what was passed on was what kind of mindset can I have? If something doesn't work right, what can I do? How can I get through this? What can I, because I'm not going to be there for every decision. I like how Pat Riley says one day you have to plant your feet and I think he says just decide this is where I'm going to kick ass. I think is his words from his book. But the idea is that one day you have to decide and stand up for what you're going to do, and you have to firmly plant your feet and do that. And I love the idea that I'm able to share this is an option, not the only way, but a way that we can work together to make a plan and stand up and be for something. And so I try to have what I do because it screams so much louder than anything I'll say. I try to live what it is we're going to do, whether it's helping a service project. We have a lady lives around the corner from us, and she said, I was told your son mows lawns. And I honestly don't want to mow more lawns because I'm 58 and I don't really like mowing lawns, but I go with him to every lawn because I get to be with him. So every Saturday, that's our dedication. I take him to karate class. We come home, we mow lawns till the afternoon. So I miss trips to the lake or different events, but we spend time. She got really sick. She was in the hospital. Her daughter calls and says, would you come visit her? And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to go visit her. So we go visit. And she goes, I can't tell you how much my mom appreciates you guys. That you would kind of wrap your arms around her because her kids live 45 minutes to an hour away, but you guys look out for her, you help her. She had some pine trees that got removed and all this dirt. And I said, if you'll buy the sod, we'll put it in. Let's make this happen. No problem. And so we put sod in her front yard. And then her fence fell over. And so I took a bunch of 12 and 13-year-old boys over and we made it a project and we'll fix it. This is just what we do. Let's do this. And he can see an effect on her that I think is amazing. So how did Al change? You asked what I was like first, or we talked about that I said like really, really stupid things. I don't know if I like your haircut. I don't know if I like this. And I will tell you, if your husband doing that, please stop because your wife will remember that until the day you die. And she'll probably remember it after. She just won't be able to tell you about it. Right. But so Jody, my current wife now, who's amazing and just absolutely an incredible partner, came home one day and she said, oh, I've got a haircut. Do you like it? And I thought, this is a road that is fraught with peril, right? And I said, I don't know. Do you like it? And she's like, well, do you like it? And I said, oh, do you like it? And she goes, you're not going to answer, are you? I said, no, I'm not. And I said, but the real question, Jody, is why am I not going to answer that question? And so she said, oh, okay. Why aren't you going to answer that question? And I said, because Jody, what makes you special and amazing to me is not your hair. And I don't want you to ever think one day in your life that how your hair is or is not, or whether you have it or you don't, has anything to do with how I feel about you. Because how I feel about you is based on the fact that inside of you is an amazing human. And I love the fact that we get to be together. And that answer worked. But that's really, truly how I feel. And I will share one last story. I know we're short on time. Oh gosh, we're Maria had a 6 week period from the beginning of July in February 2005 to March. About a month in, beginning of March, she couldn't really walk very well on her own. We'd gotten her a cane, we've gotten her an ankle brace, all but her like a little baby turns in as the wires disconnected, her arms would turn, her left arm turned in, her left leg started doing the same. And she's like, I'd like to take a shower. I'm like, let me help you with that. So I went in and I turned the water on to get it warm. We pushed the wheelchair in there for her. Then I helped pick her up and I'd put a towel over the toilet seat so she could sit on that. And I helped her get undressed and I picked her up and I set her in the shower and I closed the curtain and I said, what do you need? Here's some soap and here's this. And so I got her all ready. I said, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Her right hand worked fine. She could do anything she wanted to with her right side. She just couldn't do it with her left. And I said, I'll be back in 10. Sounds great. So I go back in 10 minutes and we turn off the water and we put the stuff away we need to. And I pick her up and I put her back on this towel and I help her get dried off and I help her get dressed. And I pushed her in the room and I thought to myself, I am in such awe of how much I care for this woman, this daughter of God. I'm so impressed at how much I care for her. And she's not running and she's not skiing and she's not water skiing. She's just being. And it really changed my mindset to the power was the person, not the function or the activity or the event. The power was the fact that I truly got to serve someone who needed help, and that was transformational for me. And so if I were to give advice, if you want to pass on something, pass on how much you care about how they are, and pass that on by your actions showing what that really looks like. Is your wife having a hard day? That's okay. What can I do to make a difference? Let me take care of that. You know what? You've done so much. Why don't you have a seat and I'll get it? And there will be days, I've had some people say it's not 50-50. Some days it's 75-25. Some days it's 90-10. And that might mean, Jason, that you give 90% of whatever you are to the marriage that day and your wife's exhausted and you're like, it's okay. We'll get there. And you work together. And I had a friend say, Jody worked on her master's in accounting, and they're like, well, aren't you like, doesn't that bother you? I said, no, not at all. Whatever I can do to support her because that's what she wants to do. Why wouldn't I do that? And yeah, were my needs a little less looked at? Probably, but it never even crossed my mind. So the thing I want to hand off to my son and my daughter is when things went bad, what did I see? When things weren't perfect, what did I do? Did I have a plan in advance? Did I learn how to communicate better? Did I know how to, when things went bad, did I know how to communicate with somebody so it wasn't a argument of let me justify and explain and defend why I'm right? It was, how can we understand this? Let me get what you have, because to me that's more important. And that's really what I want to leave, right? I'm not going to be a sculptor. I'm not going to write music. But my hope is that if I can show and teach my kids how to handle bad moments, that they'll be able to do that for their kids and they'll be able to do that for theirs. So Jason, your dad was a heck of a worker and he really cared about people, and that's been handed to you and you've run with it in your way, trying to hand that to Scott and your other kids. That's my hope. That's the way I hope I can affect forever, is that my example of how do you make a human know that they're cared for and how does that change them internally? I hope that can carry on. And so if there was anything I was to give to somebody, it would be take that time, right? Go be with them, do that, do a podcast with your son, learn together, do something together so that you get to have windshield time, whether it's via Zoom or what have you. But figure out being there and showing through what you do is such a powerful teacher.
That's, that's way cool, Al. And I have been sitting here listening to you. That philosophy that you're kind of describing is it has a lot to do with what you do. I mean, professionally, right? You have been a salesperson pretty much your whole life. I mean, you sold cars, you had your own lot, you were a trainer of other salesmen, and you're a trainer now with the Sandler method. And that idea of doing what's right for someone else is at the heart of how you're doing it, right? It's not, hey, I've got to have the sale, I've got to have the sale, I got to have the sale. It's about what is really good for them. I mean, you following what I'm saying? You agree with
Yeah.
that, or?
Yeah. No, it is the essence of it, right? With what I teach and what I get to do with the Sandler training I'm involved with is that I want people to feel like they have a chance and if they can learn how to communicate better long term, then gosh, it's only better. And then hopefully they'll take it. How do I talk to my wife better? How do I calm things around the home? How do I make a conversation based professionally or personally, but how do I make it so that my home can be that castle against the world? And how do I encourage that? And it only happens with time, but gosh, it's the coolest thing to see happen. And it's the coolest thing to see go on. I
So if
talked a
someone
lot.
wanted to learn more about the Sandler method, I mean, anybody that's going to listen to this podcast is going to want to learn more from me, in my opinion, learn more from you and your experience and how you handle things. And the Sandler method kind of teaches that to be a better salesman. And it's not about the money, right? It's about being a better person and about being able to, in the sales process, be about the other person, what's right for them.
Yeah, and it is. And I will say I sold for a long time, but I didn't have a great way to explain why I did it. And Sandler helped me have a very good vocabulary for understanding how to create a conversation that invited people to share and be open instead of just, let me tell you all my cool things. It was, I don't even know what would be important to you, but I'm willing to find out. And I think one of the things that struck me last year, because I'm old, but I'm still trying to learn. And I had a friend say in one of our training sessions, dismiss the illusion of knowing. And it hit me like a rock, like, holy cow, how would I treat people if I acted like I didn't know? Instead of saying, like, well, I already know what they're going through. I know how this is. I know how this are. I already know what they're thinking. What if I paused that and said, maybe I don't? And if I didn't know, what questions would I ask to find out? What things would I try and understand better? What way of being or talking or interacting with somebody else would I change if I didn't act like I knew everything? So, do I know exactly what Scott's going through? No. But lots of times we approach it like, oh, I know what Scott's going on. Yeah, let me just tell you. And I'll start the conversation with Scott, here's what you should do. You should do this, right? And we should all over people. You should do this. You should do that. You should do these things. Instead of really finding out, help me understand. I want to know more about what you're doing because I think there is uh, a dearth of understanding. People don't feel understood. And so they're screaming and yelling to try and get people, but it's a bad way to have that come across. So I love the idea that I've gained in Sandler. How could I understand somebody else so that if I did make a suggestion or, hey, with what you're trying to sell, if I did understand better what you're trying to get to, would these things help? And then my presentation's only based on what they need, not the top five things I think they need, but what they've expressed and been able to communicate to me that they feel is an issue. And for me, that's a changer. That's a real game changer, but it works for kids. So, and then how you say it. One of the things I've tried this year is not to should on people as much. And so what does that mean? So we bring this tractor back from Virginia. It's got some rusty parts. We're out in the backyard and my son's like, Dad, let's throw all this rust away. And I'm going nuts in my mind. I'm like, I have no idea how to replace this. What on earth are we going to do? And so I was like, but if I say that, what are you doing? I can't believe it. Stop that. I lose the right to be involved with a crucial conversation later on. Dad, I got my heart broken. Dad, this happened. Dad, this bad thing happened. Dad, my wife. If I lose my mind over something stupid like rusty parts on a tractor, he'll know that next time he goes to talk to me, that's the dad he'll get. So I thought to myself, how can I let him know how important he is to me, but also I can't handle what he's doing, right? So it's a little balancing act. So I thought, duh, Al, you teach this. Why don't you try it? So I said to him, Jonah, do you mind if I mention something to you? So I asked for permission first. And he said, yeah, that's okay. So the first thing I did is I wanted to make sure that he understood his identity with me was phenomenal. Jonah, I want to let you know how fortunate I feel to be your dad and how much I love to get to be with you. It's one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. Thank you for being my son. He's like, oh, thanks, Dad. I said, would you mind though? So I separated his identity, who he is. I had to separate that from the actions that were happening. And so I separated it from his role and I said, Jonah, do you mind if I share with you a couple of your actions that are causing me heartburn? Not, you're a terrible kid, quit doing that, but I love you to bits, but your actions are causing me trouble. He goes, oh, that's fine. I said, man, you are throwing away parts that I don't know how to replace. And I'm just sitting here watching you do it. And I get what you're doing, but I don't know how to fix it. Can we stop? And he's like, oh, yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, no problem at all. I was like, what just happened? Right? Up to that stage, if I ever made a comment like, you shouldn't do that or you shouldn't do that, he just had this like, oh, sorry, I'll never do it again moment. And I was like, man, I want to teach him how to make other people feel comfortable. And the cool part is that works for sales, that works for families, that works for husband and wife, that works for working with a CFO. I need to make sure you're okay. If I give a suggestion, I should always say, Scott, do you mind if I share something with you? Is that okay? And I'll ask for permission. Hopefully, Scott says yes. If not, I'll keep it to myself. But we can have a different conversation at that point. And the standard sales guy, he likes to shut on people. You know, you should buy this. You should really do it the way I'm thinking. You should really look at this product. You should really do this. And so it's something in my head that I had not thought about. And Sandler helped me reframe a conversation around it. And I was like one of those mind blowing up moments. Like, oh my gosh, I got to do this.
That's cool. That's cool. So yeah, gosh, I'd like to keep going, but we're kind of running out of time. And it's been phenomenal what you've had to say today. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some difficult experiences that you've been through, but what it's helped you to accomplish is truly inspiring. It really is. I mean, I watch very carefully. I can see, occasionally you'll post stuff on um, social media about something that Jonah said or something you guys did, and you can really tell that you are embodying everything that you said today. Which I mean, truly doing it. That's really cool. So I honor you. I think it's great. Scott, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm sorry for coming in late, but from what I have heard, it's been very helpful. Thank you.
So, Scott, did you hear something today that you thought, I'm going to try that different in my own house?
Yeah, once my daughter gets old enough.
I just want you to know communicating with your wife the same way will make a huge difference because your daughter's not there by herself. But if you want to try it, I'd love to hear how it went.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Cool. Thanks for having me. It's been great catching up with you guys.
Yeah, and we're going to everyone that's listeners. We will put Al does teach the Sandler method, and he has a business that does that. And sales is life. I don't know how to say that exactly right. You're or always there's a book out there that says sell or be sold, and I don't remember who wrote it. Do you remember Scott who wrote that? Anyway, it's like you're constantly selling, and that sales or communication is such a fundamental thing of life and everything we do, and it's fundamental to like what we're talking about here of passing on wealth, being able to do that in a way that really makes a difference for the other person. So okay, Scott, we'll give it back to you.
Yeah, and just like Jason was saying, guys, we will put all of Al's links in the show notes down below. If you'd like to connect with Jason or I, please check the same place. We'll put our links down there. And if you liked today's episode, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Really helps us out and lets us know what you guys like to hear more about. Last, remember that mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they are the best. We will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.